Hey guys, what is going on? Shaw here, back with another Mythic commentary. Today I'm going to be looking at an 18 times Shrine of the Storm from last week. The affixes during this instance were Necrotic, Bursting, Tyrannical, and Beguiling. Beguiling was enchanted centric, so there's going to be a stronger presence of the enchanted emissaries throughout this key, which means we're going to be spending a fair amount of time during trash pulls knocking those emissaries back. When it comes to bursting, we're going to have to just be careful on watching how many ads we're killing at the same time. We're either going to be looking to stagger them, or not stagger them, but like make sure the dot falls off, or we're going to be looking to blow everything up within a very small window. With Necrotic is typically more of a pseudo enrage for every pull. The higher stacks, the less we're going to be able to heal, so we're going to either be spending time kiting, or we're going to be looking to finish the pull before Necrotic stacks get too high. And then Tyrannical is simply just bosses are going to be extremely difficult, and they have to be performed really well, and if not, there's a lot of one-shot mechanics. So to start off this dungeon, we're going to be pulling almost everything, and we actually do lose Eld really early here just because Bursting shot up to 6. We intended for that, but just I think it might have been a line of sight issue because he was still in the hallway. And then we're going to be handling this Templar. The Templar we're going to be kind of doing solo right now just because we're trying to catch up. That Bursting took a big toll on the healer, and like obviously we already had an early death. So we're looking just to catch back up on heals, and then we're going to be pulling the 8 initiates across the room here. So I'm going to be chaining it slightly, but not with enough time left where the bursting will stagger. So with these initiate pulls, typically Necrotic will stack up fairly quickly. Link does go down there. Link is extremely powerful cooldown for Necrotic week and for bursting week. So that's one reason why we're bringing the Shaman. I'm going to talk about comp in a little bit when I have a little bit more time to. So these attendants are a little bit difficult because we don't have a class that's well suited to handle the Enchanted Emissary. I'm doing my best to keep the Enchanted Emissary away while also keeping the attendants kicked and maintain aggro. So this is kind of a difficult pull. Not that it's going to like hit insanely hard, but there's just like a lot to manage for the tank to do. And then once that Enchanted is gone, I'm going to be chaining into these droplets so we can just blow it up really quick. But keep in mind on Necrotic weeks, these droplets will stack up your the debuff of Necrotic insanely fast. Like I just jumped up to 24 stacks there, 25 stacks. So this is going to make these water blasts from the attendants hits really, not that they're hitting hard, but the best way Guardian Druids handle these is by healing through it with Frenzied Regeneration or through externals like trinkets and like health pots and stuff, and Necrotic is going to affect that. So following these attendants, we're just going to be kind of chain pulling. I do have a specific route for a percentage that we're going to be looking to pull. So we're going to be pulling this Templar and trying to chain it over to the Spiritualist. Even these Templars do a lot of casts. They do this Protective Aura, and then they do this thing called Tidal Surge, which are both kickable and both purgeable. So because we're running 2 purging classes, Demon Hunter and Shaman, these guys are not a threat to our group whatsoever. The only thing we have to watch out for is this Heaving Blow. It's just a frontal AoE. And I'm trying to do my best to drag him, but like we're just chain stunning him and kicking him and like not letting this Heaving Blow go off. So he's just standing still. So the start of the dungeon is probably going to be the most dangerous for Guardian Druids. There's a lot of magical damage that's going out. We do have a really good group for kicks. We have 5 available kicks because we're running that Shaman. The Shaman brings that 12-second kick within their toolkit. So we're using the Shaman's kicking on cooldown, and we're all kicking on cooldown to minimize the group damage. It is Tyrannical, so Trash isn't as brutal as like a Fortified week, but because casters tanks have a hard time mitigating magical damage, we're going to be looking to just kick as much as possible, stun as much as possible. We have a really good group for that. Almost every class has a stun. I have an AoE Disorient, we have an AoE stun, we have single target stuns, we have gouges, blinds, hexes. Even the Shaman brings in Cap Totem. So all of these things we're going to be using to make sure Necrotic is staying low and casts aren't getting off. I'm then going to pull in these droplets as a separate pull. Sometimes I'll chain it, but because of the amount of casters I pulled there, I didn't want to because Necrotic, again, is going up really fast. I started with 15, but I'm already up to 25, which is kind of like the cutoff. That means I'm taking 50% reduced healing, not only from my healer, but also from my own healing toolkit and external sources. So I just want to keep that in mind. Now, this is a pretty scary pull here. Whenever there's a Tides Emissary in Shrine of the Storm, you're typically going to want to either use a pretty good DR, so Survival Instincts for Guardian Druids, or you're going to just want to make sure you're trying to line of sight. That's what I'm doing here. I'm kind of walking back and forth between these rocks trying to cut off line of sight, though I'm having a difficult time doing it. And I accidentally pulled this next pack. So this time when I'm trying to line of sight down the stairs, I walk a little too far and stay there a little too long, and I do grab the Living Current, which this was not in our route. So that means we're going to have to make that, we're going to have to adapt to that later on, which may screw up our route a little bit. and we're going to have to skip at certain points where we don't want to skip. So pulling this group is extremely bad. Again, it's kind of manageable on a Tyrannical week, but I do end up going down here just because the Living Current's damage, when he throws you up in the air, a lot of things are going on. They're still getting their cast off, and their damage is still going through. So Water Blasts aren't getting kicked. I can't mitigate because I'm stunned, and our Shaman can't heal because he's up in the air and also stunned. And Necrotic is going up pretty quickly because the Living Current, for whatever reason, can attack really, really fast. So I do go down there, and then our Demon Hunter will soon follow a death as well, but we do manage to get the pull down. So I have to spend a little bit of time running back. QB has to spend a little time running back on his DH, but it's early enough that we're not going to call like, you know, a burnt key here. We have the confidence that we're going to be able to do the rest of the skips relatively easily, and we definitely have the damage in the group to be able to handle this. So we're going to be using a Shroud skip here. Yes, we could have gone the front way. Normally what we do is we skip this Living Current pack by doing the Waterfall skip. If you're not familiar with that, I might cover that in another video. It's really cool skip, but you need a rogue for it, and a lock helps as well, something that I actually learned yesterday. This video is about a week old now, so I am going to clear these droplets. I'm going to tag them pretty much once with Thrash, and then I'm going to just ignore them. Our Demon Hunter is going to rip aggro on a lot of them, but I'd rather have him taking their Necrotic stacks because the droplets don't hit that hard, and we're going to just handle these apprentices. Now, again, their Tempest casts need to be kicked by pretty much on cooldown, so whenever kicks are up, we need to be kicking those just because magical damage is really hard for a lot of tanks to mitigate, especially Guardian Druids are known, like, notorious for not being able to mitigate magical damage. I don't have trinkets like edicts from the raid currently, so I don't have these crazy like shields that I can put up, and I can't mitigate magic damage really well using external trinkets. But I do have a trinket on the prismatic, the refracting prism from BOD. It's a 400, so it's a super low item level, but it does have a socket, is why I like it. So that's helping. But outside of that, like, casts are just going to hurt us a lot, especially with necrotic stacks going up. My self healing is going to be lower. So we just want to make sure we're kicking as much as possible. Akisir is a pretty one-shotty boss. If you mess up his mechanics, you'll probably just die, or you'll get knocked off the edge because it's a very small boss room. We go into pull here, but we're not popping hero. We're doing this for a few reasons. The split is extremely difficult to manage, and because it's going to happen before 3 minutes are up and big cooldowns are up again, we want to make sure we have something for that. So everyone's popping cooldowns on pull, but we are making sure that we're going to have hero for that. Now, this boss is pretty easy. Just dodge a Surging Rush and dispel the Choking Brine, and then don't stand in it. Undertow is a pretty easy mechanic to handle. All you have to do is pretty much run forward. It's a little bit difficult as a caster, but as for melee and like being on the tank, for example, it's not too difficult. Now, as a Guardian Druid, and I think as tanks in general, when I've tanked on like my monk and stuff, his hitbox is a lot larger than his like actual hitbox, so you have to stand in it and closer to his actual model to make sure you're getting certain hits off. Like melee attacks will still go through, but sometimes thrashes won't hit just because you're too far away, even though it looks like you're in range. So if you notice where I'm standing, I'm like pretty much at his like little tornado-y water thing, just to make sure I'm getting those thrashes and swipes effectively hitting the boss and making sure I'm doing damage, even though my damage is not that significant on this boss. It's about 11k. So he will split at 50%. At 50%, we're all going to go to different markers. Our strategy is to blow up triangle as fast as possible. Eld will be standing on the blue marker to tank those, making sure that the ad's not casting on random players, and I'm going to be standing at the X marker. So, and our DPS are just going to be loading into triangle. Now, one thing I do want to note though too is that shamans are extremely good. Resto shamans are extremely good at doing damage, especially on fights where a lot of the healing, like there isn't a lot of healing. Like if you notice, Egg's doing 25k. Oftentimes, Resto Druids have a really good time. Like they're obviously like a meta healer, but they're really good at doing damage. But I think shamans have the highest sustained single target damage as long as you don't have to heal. Now, obviously, Resto Druids have a better toolkit to be able to heal and do damage at the same time with kitty weaving. But shamans, in the right circumstances with the right Azurite traits, can do a lot of damage. So it's almost like having like an additional DPS as well. So a lot of these tyrannical bosses are going to melt. Egg, I think, is running 3 DPS traits for this because of the last boss specifically, but it helps on all the bosses. Now, notice where I'm tanking him. Not where I'm taking him because of his because he charges here and I can't move him, but I'm facing him sideways, and this is for one reason and one reason only. Whenever you're running with the pet class, so hunters, DKs, and then any classes with like possible pets, meaning like monks with their proc of Zuen, we want to make sure that pets have a tendency to run behind the boss. So we want to make sure he's facing sideways, because if he's facing like the middle of the room, the pets will jump behind him and possibly pull that pack that we skipped, which will pretty much cause a group wipe. So you just want to keep that in mind. So like I said, monks are one that a lot of people don't think of because they do have a Zuen proc, which is that little tiger, the white tiger. Hunters, obviously, for pets. Sometimes warlocks as well. And shamans. Like if shamans use Earth Ellie to get a little bit extra damage, Earth Ellie could run behind him and like pull that pack because of their AoE threat generation. So we're pulling Heldis. Now we pulled the initiates beforehand, so we just have to deal with Heldis, but we're going to slowly chain in these apprentices because Heldis has a massive health pool and we don't want to just sit here doing single target because we have a lot of effective cleave. BM hunters have really good cleave on a few targets. Rogues obviously have to hit one button and just continue their single target rotation, so really effective cleave. And then demon hunters, of course, with their I-beam. I-beam is just part of their rotation. So now that everything's low, we're going to roll in these initiates and we're going to use the healer's going to make sure that his cooldowns are being chained to handle all this bursting. So we do get one stack, which rolls into 2 there, which rolls into 3. Now, we don't do a good job here, which then rolls up into 5, into 6. So Link goes down. Like I said, Link is amazing. As long as Link is down, like, you pretty much won't die through bursting. It's very, very rare that you'll die through bursting when Link is down, especially because there's other things like everyone has some kind of healing. I have obviously a Frenzied Regen, we have Spirit Mend, we have the Leech from the Demon Hunter who was still able to hit Heldis, and then we have like Crimson Violence, stuff like that. So extremely easy to stay alive in a Link is what I'm essentially trying to say. So next pull is we're going to be handling this Void Touched Emissary. It's not too difficult here because we have this little wall that we can just dip around. While they're still heading that void, I'm going forward to pull this Enchanted Emissary. We're trying to be really aggressive here with our pulls, and we're trying to chain everything together because we don't really want to stop unless like Egg absolutely needs mana, or we just need to like recover because, you know, maybe there's like a group wipe or something and we need to get like food buff. But for the most part, we want to be really aggressive with these pulls because we want to make sure we have enough time, because there's going to be points in the dungeon where we kind of have to stop and like discuss certain pulls because some things get pretty tricky in this dungeon that you're going to start seeing pretty much like in the next couple minutes here actually. So this Enchanted goes, we got rid of the Enchanted pretty easily. Normally Guardian Druids are really good at handling this because of the ability to spam Moonfire, but the issue with that is their threat gen is super low, but having not only Misdirect but also Tricks with Azure Beams, those are all insanely strong utility abilities in both of these classes' toolkit that allows me to maintain aggro while handling the Enchanted. So it's pretty easy to do. I'd rather have like a healer be able to do it, but shamans don't really have the toolkit to be able to spam an instant cast ability to keep an Enchanted away, especially a slow outside of like Earthbind. So we are going to clear this room a little bit because we're going to be using Runecarver's Sorin to our advantage. Now, oftentimes people will just skip mini bosses. In 8.1, I think there was a change to their percentage. They used to only give like 2%, but now they give like 5. It might have been a little higher than 2, but it was like 2.4 or 2.5, and now they give like 5.18. So doing these 3 mini bosses alone is like 15%, which is a huge, huge amount of percentage. So you can skip a lot of different trash. So what's nice about Sorin is he does this minor reinforcing ward. So this ward is a 75% damage reduction, and it affects both enemy mobs and yourself. So you can use this to your advantage. And it also is effective to necrotic, bursting, AoE abilities. Basically, any damage, as long as you're in this room, is going to be reduced by 75%. So what we're going to do is, on his next Carved Flesh, we're going to run out and grab the next pack, and we're going to use this rune to help mitigate a lot of the damage, especially from like the tides, not being able to kick and stuff like that. So this is a pretty, I would say a pretty hard tactic to pull off. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of group coordination because your group has to understand that like the rune's there. I'm constantly saying, guys, I don't care what AoE's on the ground, just stay in the ward. Just stay in the ward. Because the ward, like, even though we're standing in this like this Tempest Tornado, no one's really taking damage because it's reduced by so much. Now, I'm trying to do my best to keep everything on the side of the rune. You want to keep everything just outside so melee and range can stand within. Link goes down there to make sure we're all stable. Because I'm in the Link and trying to not stand in AoEs, a lot of things are in the rune. You want to make sure that's not happening because you want to have effective uptime on your DPS. And like I said, enemy mobs are affected by this rune as well. So if enemy mobs are standing inside of it, they're also not going to die. So making sure they're all out and you're all in is the best way to successfully do this. Now, it's best to stand on the edge of the rune to bait certain spells, like the Tempest Tornado, for example. Sometimes if it's like you can survive it if it's in the rune, but you obviously don't want it in the rune, so baiting it to the edge is perfect. But just making sure you're in the rune is the best way to handle that. So that was pretty clean outside of my like mistakes of positioning. So we're making really good time right now. We have 4 minutes left on the hero debuff. The hero debuff is a great way to track the pacing of the dungeon. For us, we know that we want to hero first boss, second boss, and fourth boss. It's possible to get 4 heroes out of here if you're going to hero on trash, but because after the second boss we're going to be skipping a lot of the trash, we probably won't have hero up in time for the third boss, and there's not a lot of trash between the third and fourth boss. So making sure you're getting to the second boss as fast as possible when the hero debuff is just coming off, you're making great time. Now in Fortified Keys, it's a little bit more difficult because there's a lot of trash between the first and second boss, Aquaseer, and the Tide Sage Council. So you have to kind of, it depends on the week, though a lot of groups do skip on Fortified weeks. A lot of groups try to skip as many mini bosses as possible. Again, though, it comes down if like there's a Void Emissary or not. A Void makes it extremely difficult to skip with Rogue and locks and stuff like that because there's a lot of lock gate skips that you can do as well. So you just have to keep all these things in mind. If it's a Fortified week, you're pretty much guaranteed to only get 3 heroes out of here because of how long this trash takes. A lot of the mini bosses, there's ways to handle with their mechanics. Like again, using the rune to mitigate a lot of the damage that Soren is putting out, or using line of sight to help it with this Guardian Elemental. So there's ways to handle everything. So going into this next room, because we pulled the Living Current earlier, we're going to be looking to kind of skip both sides, both pack sides. So I'm pulling this middle, I'm pulling it back. Now bursting is going to ramp up pretty quickly here. It's going to go up to 4 because there's 4 initiates in here. They should all be going down roughly at the same time. I think it rolled from a 1 to a 4, which isn't as bad as if it rolled from a 3 to a 4. Eld goes down there because he was standing in that like Tempest Tornado. I don't think he realized it. It's kind of hard when it's on the stairs, so just make sure you're watching for that. I get a Typhoon there to get the knockback, and because we went for a battle res there, just making sure Eld comes up safe and doesn't have to worry about like positioning right away. So this pack is going to go down pretty easily. It's a little tight though. When you're skipping both sides, you don't have a lot of room to play with. You have to walk directly through the middle here. This isn't something my group does often, so it's a little bit difficult. Like we're not comfortable doing this kind of skip yet. Just skipping both sides. Like it's totally doable without a rogue, but it's really tight, especially when the initiates run in fear. So I jump into the water to snap. If you don't know that they snap here, you can jump just into the edge of the water here, and everything you pull will snap, both the initiates and the other packs if you want to. Unfortunately, I got too close there, so I snapped in an additional pack of initiates. My necrotic is up to 32 stacks. We just rolled from a 5 to a 6 to a 7 bursting. I go down. Cutilate, I think, lives here, but the initiates run away in fear and pull an additional pack, and this will be a group wipe. Or not a group, well, pretty much a group wipe. I think everyone dies except Cutilate, who was able to get a vanish off. Eld tries to feign death there, but dies. Now, this is the problem with sometimes skipping these packs. In tight skips like this, especially when you're handling mobs who will run in fear when they hit that like 30% health percentage, you just have to keep that in mind. Now, again, because we're not comfortable at skip, like we knew that they run in fear, but we weren't thinking like, oh, they're definitely going to run into another pack and we're going to pull. Also, I got too close with the initiate, so there was just a lot of mistakes that happened there. Up to that point, it was a really clean run. No one releases except me, because I have the easiest time running back. The Templar in this pack here that I'm skipping right now has True Sight. Just in case I pull it, I can always dash away and meld, or Lightfoot away and meld. And then also because I'm able to like quickly mount and have cat form, it's pretty easy for me to traverse back through the dungeon to get to where we died at to get a res. Now, Q-Late is still in combat. He needs to reset his vanish. So he's just like kiting all the mobs, which kind of confused me because I definitely thought he already vanished. So I'm like running back trying to get the res. I'm like, wait, I don't want to get back in combat and have to burn more time. So he's about to get the vanish off. I'm trying to find where Egg's at. I'm nervous that I'm going to get into combat, so I back up a little bit. And then I'm going to get a res on Egg. He's going to get a res on the group. And then we're going to food buff and get ready to continue pulling the rest of the dungeon. So at this point, I'm going to quickly talk about group comp because we have some time here. So this is kind of an odd group, but you've seen me run with most of these players before. Egg is obviously on his Resto Shaman. Great synergy with Guardian Druids. Their masteries both play off of each other extremely well. Egg also can pull an insane amount of damage, especially on like most of the bosses he's able to do. Be able to tunnel on. The second boss is like the one boss that I don't think he can do as much damage, but the strategy we use, I think he can put out a fair amount, but most bosses he's going to put out an insane amount of damage. Also, Spirit Link, crazy strong for bursting. He can handle every 3 minutes, basically no one will die. We can burst as high as we want, we can be really careless with rolling, not even close to an issue. They also have a pretty great toolkit when it comes to having an additional kick. Really, really helpful for this dungeon, especially because Guardian Druids can't really mitigate. So this boss, really strong for because we have an additional kick. And then, again, just in general. So Spirit Link goes down there because we're rolling from a 7 to an 8, but even with Link down, he's still able to keep us up. So Egg's just a fabulous shaman. Love running with him. Really great player. Eld brings a lot as well on his hunter. Being able to damage, not always necessarily in line of sight, is pretty helpful. Having a pet stun is great. He has access to a hero. He also has really good cleave, which we're doing a lot of this dungeon, especially on like the second boss, for example. Having a range kick as well for the fourth boss is extremely strong. And then also having like frozen trap and an immunity, all great things to have in a toolkit. Now, quickly, I'm going to come back to group comp, but I do want to talk about the strategy on this boss. You may have not seen it before. We're actually going to tank the boss on between these two markers, and we're going to have all the melee and range stand outside of the room. So they're not going to have to even worry about mechanics outside of kicking. So there's a lot on the tank here. The tank has to position everything properly, not get hit by tornadoes, not get hit by cleave, and on top of that, I'm calling it a kick rotation. So there's a lot that I'm doing during this encounter in this instance that makes my job a little bit more difficult, but it's also on the DPS to make sure they're getting kicks, and the healer has to obviously like keep me alive. You'll see a little bit later in the dungeon or in this encounter that I'm gonna have to I'm gonna be ping pong back and forth with tornadoes. So just keeping that in mind and being ready to react with a DR. So survival instincts in the case of the Guardian Druid. So making sure they're as close to the sludge as possible without standing in the reinforcing ward. Again, you can use that to your advantage if you'd like, but you don't have to. And then we did let a kick go off there, or a cast go off, but the kick rotation is pretty standard, and having access to 5 kicks instead of like the standard like 2 or 3 or 4 kicks is extremely helpful. So we're able to get most of these off, and we can even overlap without much like pressure. Like if we overlap 2 kicks, like we don't have to worry about it because we still have 3 more. So this boss is basically just bouncing back and forth between blue and triangle as needed. So dodging cleaves, and then whenever reinforcing ward goes down, just moving out of it. So pretty easy. So back to group comp. Cutilate is another player you guys have seen me run with frequently. He's an outstanding outlaw rogue. He can also play assassination really well, but he's mainly in keys. He just runs outlaw because it's just a lot better. And I think he prefers it because it does a just insane amount of damage. Plus, he doesn't have to get a reset, so I can chain pull. I can chain pull without him having to like get resets in. So rogues are obviously meta. They're run in almost every group. A lot of groups run 2 of them. Some groups even run 3 and have had really insane success. Their toolkit's crazy from having immunities from both physical and damage, like really good DRs. Obviously, a great toolkit for CC with gouge, blind, cheap shots, pistol shot. Like all of these insane things in their toolkit. Actually, I don't know if they have cheap shot or not now that I say it. Also having Shroud, crazy good. Sap is an insanely good CC, and you're going to be seeing it used really effectively coming up here shortly to do a skip. So obviously great toolkit. Their damage is pretty good now this season, and then it scales really well with damage because of just Blade Fury. You hit that one button, continue your single target rotation, everything cleaves. So just crazy strong class. The only thing they lack is like an AoE stun. If they had an AoE stun, they would just be god tier. So to help with that, we bring a Demon Hunter. A Demon Hunter is not only going to buff Egg's damage with the magic brand that they put on enemies that they're attacking, but he's also going to bring an AoE stun, which is a great toolkit. He also brings in a single target stun. Darkness, insane group utility, especially when there's a lot of damage going out. You'll see this being used on a lot of boss fights and during certain trash pulls. It's really strong against Void Emissaries as well, if we ever have to do a Void Emissary. And then also, on top of that, their damage scales really well, both single target and cleave. So single target is fabulous, and it's also naturally cleaving as well. So when we're pulling larger packs, doesn't have to change up too much of the rotation, and there's no requirement for me to like stand still and like I can kite as much as I want. Demon Hunters will still do the same amount of damage. So really good comp. QB's a new player in our group. We've been running with him the past week or 2. He mains a warrior, but he plays DH as well. So a lot of times why we paused before that last boss is because we kind of had to explain to him how we're going to do this fight, because he knows all the mechanics, but some of the strategies that we use are a little unfamiliar to him. But he's been performing extremely well, and he's been a great sport for a lot of these higher end keys. So you might see him a few times on his between his warrior and his Demon Hunter. So that's our comp. Our comp is a little goofy. Running like a BM Hunter isn't a super common class to see in Mythic Plus, but Eld's a fabulous hunter. And then also Egg. Egg on his Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman's is one of the least popular healers in keys, especially in high end. But the Resto Shaman, like I said several times already, Link is such a powerful cooldown, especially for bursting and necrotic. It'll keep a group alive through anything. So we can kind of be a little bit more careless when it comes to bursting with the Shaman, as long as that Spirit Link is up. And we're making sure we're keeping track of that, obviously. So these 2 pulls are a little bit, they're not too hard. You just want to make sure you're getting a kick rotation on the Ritualists. The kick rotation can be handled, I want to say, by 2 people. I think if you kick at the right time, the cast finishing is about 15 seconds apart. So you can easily kind of manage it with 2 people, but because we have 5 kicks, we're just kicking kind of when we feel like it. The thing about this dungeon, though, is the Tide Sage Enforcers, which I'll be pulling in a second, and you saw in the last pull, hit insanely hard. They chunk your health for just a really dramatic amount, and then also it puts an AoE everywhere, so a lot of people have to move. That's another benefit of the Hunter, is there are ranged DPS that don't suffer from movements, so they can keep up really good DPS as well. So I forgot to mention about the Hunter, but that's really effective like in this point. So the deep smashes go out, AoEs go down, but he can still do whatever he wants. So we're being careful here because the Void Emissary was pulled. I'm trying to line a sight around the edge here. Spirit Link goes down to stabilize everyone because a few of us took damage from the Void Emissary as well as the Deep Smash. And then we're going to be going into this Void Touch as soon as we're safe. So pretty much at this point, we're at... So going to the third boss, if you can hit like the 85% mark, you're golden. I think in the very last boss room, there's about just under 15% worth of trash. So if you can just be above 15% going down the last boss, you're golden. So the skip we were going to do, we obviously had a little bit change in route because we weren't going to pull the Living Current earlier, and the 2 packs we tried to like skip through, we normally pull those. So a little bit, we had to adapt a little bit to the strategy on how to pull this dungeon, but we made it work in the end. So this is the rogue skip I was talking about earlier with Sap. So this room can be skipped completely as long as no one aggroes the Deathbringer. So Sap is going to go off on this first one that I marked with orange. We're all going to run into the room. Once we're all in and out of the range, aggro range, we're going to get a Sap on this marked ad with orange. Not ad, trash with orange. And then we're able to just walk through. So the reason you can't just go the short way is because the one that we just sapped, the most recent one that was sapped, is kind of in the middle of that door archway. So if you try to sap the first one and just walk through, you'll aggro. So you have to do the long way around, but it's definitely worth it because not only is it those 2 mobs, but it's also they spawn the entire room full of tentacles. So I think it's like 8 tentacles that are all ranged so you can't cleave, and they all have to be kicked because the damage actually is pretty significant. Now, to skip the bridge, we're simply just going to Shroud, Healer's going to pop Sprint and then Grappling Hook, and we're going to easily make it through here. We're going to just be doing the left side. There is a Tides on the right, and Tides in this pack, even though they're all non-elites and we're just going to beam everything to death, Tides makes this pull actually pretty scary on sometimes higher keys, especially fortified keys, because the lash that they do does an insane amount of damage, and if you can't CC any of them, it's really difficult. This can be handled by simply just pulling the Tides away, but then you can't get effective cleave on it. So it's a little bit of a scary situation. We're just going to skip it, essentially. We're at 87%. That's like a perfect amount. We're a little over, but it's not an issue because the eels in the last room are not difficult whatsoever. All right, so coming down to this third boss is this boss. There's an interesting strategy for it. If you guys haven't seen, in higher keys, you can't break yourself out of the mind control using the orbs that are spawning, or what the mechanic's called Wake in the Void, which will spawn orbs that'll follow the players that it spawns close to. So we have to use this pool that I marked with triangle. Now, QB's not used to this. He hasn't done this key before, so we're going to have a little bit of a mistake early on, but it'll work out. So we'll stabilize the pool. So Wake in the Void comes out, orbs spawn. Now, I'm going to try to kite a little bit away from triangle, so the melee will have I try to loop around whenever the mind control comes out. Not as effective as I wanted to. QB tries to soak orbs here, which he somehow misses 2 of them walking through, but as you notice, only 3 of them got him down to 91%. They each do about 3%, and you need to do 50% of their health before it breaks. And Surrender to the Void isn't a long cast. It's about 10 or 15 seconds or so. So you want to make sure you're getting that pool ASAP. Now, he swims down too far, so he dies because he did break the mind control, but he wasn't able to get out in time. So now I have to generate enough rage to get over there to try to battle res him, because I'm the only battle res in the group. So this is going to make the boss go a little bit slower than we would like to. So Wake in the Void comes back out. I'm trying to get enough rage here. This boss is pretty easy. All you have to do is keep up a kick rotation and make sure you're jumping in the pool whenever you get Surrender to the Void. I have to he swam down and to the side, so I had to angle myself there. We get him up, not an issue. He learned. So now we're gonna just basically try to bait orbs away from the pool so players can run over there. Now players can eventually clear up these orbs, but it's gonna take 12 or so to be able to do that because each orb is about 3.5%. So we're gonna need upwards of 12. So this, I want to say this, he's going to do 2 more Wake in the Voids, and then the MC is going to come out, and then that's when the player can soak the orbs, clear the room, and then we'll start over. So pretty much every third mind control, they'll have to pretty much jump into the pool and do this. Some classes have an easier time getting out of others. Demon Hunters obviously can double jump. Really easy for them to get out of the pool. Hunters and Boomkins, like classes with disengages, have a very easy time getting out of the pool. Monks with Transcendence, easy time. But honestly, it's a tiny little ledge. If you're just pressing your forward button and jump, you're probably going to get out of the pool. So orbs come out again. Cutulate is mind controlled. He does soak every orb, and that still only gets him to 52% I saw, and then we just did a little bit of damage to him. So not an issue. Just in higher keys, you just won't have enough damage to break them out, and if you do, you'll break them out and you're just going to lose so much DPS on the boss that the boss will take so much longer. So we're using the environment to our advantage here. I don't know if this was completely intended or not. I think the damaging pool was supposed to prevent you from skipping this boss and going down the last one, which again, I don't know why you would, because you have to complete this. You have to kill this boss eventually, and to skip all the way down there and then come all the way back doesn't make sense. But it is a cool mechanic. Now, if you're ever thinking you probably might die from the Surrender of the Void, and this maybe affects lower keys, you can always jump off the edge and just die, though that's not the most... I think it ports your body back up so you can always get a battle res, but if you're trying to soak orbs and you just don't have enough and there isn't effective DPS, but using the electric pool is the best way to do that. So again, like I said, kick rotation is just something that just happens on this boss, and if you do that, you're going to be kind of mitigating a lot of the damage, and then just making sure you're not getting stunned by orbs and jumping in the pool. So pretty easy boss on tyrannical keys. It sometimes takes a little bit of time. Now we do have 10 minutes left. Hero is up and we're heading down to the last boss, so we're feeling really good on time here. So there's a few ways to handle the last boss room. You can either do all of the trash and just be done with it by the end of the key. You can skip everything and do the boss and then go back and do trash to finish up the dungeon. You can do half of the trash, like you can do the stuff on the platform just to give you the whole boss room to do, and then do the trash afterwards, or you can do what we're about to do, and we're going to actually pull the boss, and then during intermission, using the boss's mechanic to help with trash. So the boss mechanic, for those who don't know, on the healer, he'll give a debuff. I don't remember what it's called, but it essentially is a stacking debuff that stacks up to 9, and it reduces your maximum health by 10% per stack, per application, and then it also increases your damage by 10% per application. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear one pack of eels, not because we wanted to, but I think someone pulled, I don't know who it was there, but it's not a problem. The emissary isn't attached, so if you body pull using proximity, the enchanted won't follow. So we don't have to even worry about it. It doesn't give percent anyways, so it's not really an issue. I'm going to kite a little bit here just because necrotic stacked up pretty high there, plus the eel dot that they put on you. It hurts a lot, though I did run back in for whatever reason and got more stacks anyways. So what we're going to be looking to do is phase the boss, kill the ads, make sure we're cleanly out, and then we're going to be doing these denizens, so the Forgotten and the Sunken Denizen. So this boss room is massive. Now, a lot of people forget that. You can pull him all the way to the edge of this little ring, and that's not outside the boss room. So what I'm looking to do is making sure we're maximizing the floor space, because when he does the Yawning Gate, or Gaze, or whatever it's called, we want to position it so we have enough room in the boss room to have enough room that we're going to be able to kite him away from the ads that'll spawn in phase 2. So first one goes out, I'm positioning him right next to it, but enough room for melee to maneuver around the tentacles that are spawning. Grasp of the Sunken City is coming out, so the healer and the tank go to a separate realm with a Sunken Denizen, and then the DPS go to a realm with 2 of the Forgotten Denizen. Because of the debuff that Egg has, he's able to just absolutely destroy the boss, which makes this phase really easy. And because he's range, unlike rest of druids, for example, he can stay at a range and I don't really have to worry about aggro as much, where a druid might have to kitty weave, which puts them in melee combat, so if the denizen turns and just smacks them, they're dead. So we are coordinating with Eld, who's our range kick in the DPS group, to make sure we're able to come up top without dying, and then we're going to this pull. So as long as we're getting kicks on these Consume Essences, super easy pull, and Egg is just absolutely destroying. If you can see, Star is just getting absolutely nuked, Chain Lightning doing a lot of damage there. We're making sure kicks go off here, so Consume Essence needs to get kicked. It gets kicked by Eld. This gets kicked by Cutulate, and we're looking really, really good here. My kick is up. QB's kick just came up, and there's one kick left. Now, this is where the key goes to shit. I'm kiting the Sunken Denizen, so I'm not really focused on kick. Consume Essence goes off, and Egg goes splat. So this is where the key kind of went to shit for us. We now just lost that debuff, which is a lot bigger than you might think. Losing that debuff meant we were probably going to be able to maybe one phase this, if not make this trash insanely easy to do. Now, because he died, we have to do the whole thing over again, get the debuff, let it stack up, go into the phase, make sure we're getting kicks, which it added like an extra minute or two to the key just because of that mistake, just because of not kicking one spell 2 minutes off pretty much the timer. So if you're doing this strategy, you have to be on top of your kicks, especially with a group with 5 kicks. We shouldn't have messed up there, and we did. I can take blame because I had a kick up, and so can QB. I was kiting, which gave me a reason, but I could have easily, Guardian Druids do have a range kick. Skull Bash is a 15-yard range. I could use it, but I just didn't there. So just big mistake. Yaw Negate comes out. I'm going to kite him now kind of backwards, keeping him in between these 2 Yaw Negates. So Eds are going to come in. We're going to do our best to keep them away. Really easy time here when you have... So we had Binding Shot with a Typhoon, rooted them for 8 seconds. Ursa Vortex goes down there, and it's like... And then Earthbind Totem goes down. Just a lot... We have a lot of ways to keep these Eds slowed. Stunning them is really good as well. Incap Totem went down. We did Frozen Trap one of them. So extremely easy to... keep them CC'd. So we are looking really clean here. So Egg got the debuff. It's stacking back up. He's doing Grasp with the Sunken City. Ads didn't touch. We got a Disorient. We got a Blind. And now we're swapping. So Melee, who started on blue on the first time, now are doing it X because it's what's closest to the boss. Eld is making sure he's getting the range kick on blue, which is across the room. Egg is able to blow up this Denizen insanely fast. Like within 5 to 8 globals, it's dead. I'm going to get range kick here on the Denizen and start cutting it back over. And then we should easily be able to get a kick rotation. So that other Denizen went down. QB will come over and kick this one. And we're looking pretty clean here. So all the kicks are coming back up. Denizen is interrupted. Standard kick rotation. Coming out of this now is when we're going to kick the boss and hero. And we're going to just try to maximize uptime. Another mistake okay, so I do want to note on this. Normally these manifestations are supposed to disappear, and they didn't. So we're trying to kill them as soon as possible. Egg gets max range there, so they don't do damage to him. And we're killing off the other Denizen. So they're supposed to despawn, but they didn't. Now, the mistake I made was I screwed over the range by kiting them away from them and cutting them off by the gates. This is something you do not want to do, especially when hero's up. So now Egg with the damage buff isn't able to do any damage to him and has to maneuver, and they don't have a lot of speed or mobility, and then the hunter can barely hit him as well. And now we're completely cut off. I thought this gate behind us was supposed to despawn, but he's gonna start casting another one here. Manifestations are coming in. I'm silenced. I can't do anything about it. I can't put down Ursals. I can't Typhoon. And then those are gonna hit the boss and kill Cutilate. So Cutilate goes down. Now we don't have a kick up top. I can't battle. We have battlers available, but hunters and demon hunters can't. So we're gonna have to let it consume go off up top. And we're going to have to finish off this Denizen and make sure we get up there as fast as possible to help. So Egg's going to get a kick. I'm going to get a kick. Or actually, I didn't kick there. Egg did. Eld gets the melee kick, and then I'm going to sit on this other ad, and then we got Cutilate up with a battle res. So I'm going to get kicked there, and we're looking fine. We stabilized, so we're in an okay spot. But like I said, if the range were able to plant and do damage, the boss would have died. And that was in one phase. So that was with the buff with hero. He's at 7%. We could have easily gotten 7% if we didn't kite. We lost Cutilate, and Egg was out of range. You had the damage buff. So making sure you're... I messed up a lot on this fight with just positioning and tanking. So make sure you're not doing this exactly. Make sure your range are always... I tried to be really effective with the floor space, and I didn't have anything timed right. So the boss goes down there. Cutilate dies again. Again, my fault. And then we're going to just quickly get res and just do the rest of the trash, and we got 3 minutes left. So we know the dungeon's over. So it's pretty much a key completion. All we have to do is, I think we have to kill pretty much 2.5 packs of eels now, and we're going to be pretty much perfect on percent. So that was the key. I don't really know what else to talk about. Eels are insanely easy. On Fortified Weeks, it could be a little difficult, especially with Necrotic, but the chance of it, Fortified Necrotic is only once out of the 12-week rotation. So outside of that, you don't really have to worry about it. They don't burst. They took that away. So I'm going to pull 2 packs here at the same time. We're just going to blow up everything and hope it goes down. I do have a Survival Instincts up, so I can use that if I really want to stay alive. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. We're just going to blow this up really quick. Using Beam, I think Earth LA went down there. That's why I don't have an aggro on a lot of it. Yeah, and then I'm just going to kite. 30 seconds Necrotic, really nice and easy. So Shrine is a very difficult key for a lot of reasons. It's very punishing with graveyards. It's doing a lot of the skips are really difficult. There's a lot of mini bosses that every other week on Fortified they're gonna just hurt an insane amount, but they're also worth a good percentage. There's a lot of True Sight mobs. Void weeks make this dungeon extremely difficult as well. So there's a lot of things that aren't going for this dungeon, which make it difficult. Also, the amount of magical damage that are coming out makes it just difficult for all tanks. Now, there's trinkets you can get that are good and effective at mitigating magical damage. There's essences you can take that are good at it, but when you take those, you're losing on a lot of offensive capabilities. So very difficult key. That's why it's just an 18 and not like a 19 that I'm talking over. I actually haven't timed a 19 yet. I'm still working on it, but I hope you guys enjoy this key. If you have any questions about the strategy, builds, anything like that, or anything you want to see more in detail of, like strategies and stuff like that, or maybe a boss breakdown for Guardian Druid, I could do that. Just let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.